What's up YouTube? My name is Caden and you're watching Gasset Garage. In today's video, we're going to be finishing the rebuild on my Bombardier DS650 Sport Quad right here because I blew it up at Mini Mayhem a few weeks ago and absolutely roasted the crap out of the top end. So in the last video of this project, we got the entire top end tore down and it's all sitting here on the table. And in this video, we're going to be putting it all back together, and I'm going to be putting a high compression piston in it. So enjoy the video. Alright guys, so in the last video of this project, we got the top end of this engine completely torn apart, and we've got all of the parts right here on the table. This piston right here is definitely damaged. We smacked the valves, which was nice, gave it a nice little set of eyebrows. And also the exhaust cam right here is very, very broken. The head right here is pretty damaged. You can see how burnt it looks. And also the underside is pretty messed up. And also the exhaust valves are bent, which is not good. So we will be replacing the head. Also these cam brackets right here, you can just see how burnt and nasty they are. And this one, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's like very beat up. This plastic piece is pretty melted. The cam chain guide is also melted. I will probably reuse this because it's still decently flat, and I also couldn't really find another one on eBay that didn't come with like a $700 kit. So we're going to be reusing this even though I really don't want to. But it's just plastic, it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. And then our head gasket is absolutely disgusting. So I have a new top end gasket kit right here. And then I've also got a forged high compression piston to put in this thing, and it's really kind of a shame we're putting this inside of the engine because that thing's pretty. This thing is really nice looking, and you can see how much more compression we're going to get with this one versus the old flat top piston. So I'm pretty excited for that. That should give us a lot of extra power. And then later in the video, we're also going to be replacing the front shock bushings on this thing. But we will also be reusing our cylinder right here because the inside of it is still very, very clean, and you can actually still see the cross hatching on the inside of it. You can't really see it on camera, but I can see that it's in there. So I'm also going to be cleaning out the coolant passages on this so we can reuse that, as well as all the little plastic and stuff that's still in there. But enough talking right now. Let's go ahead and get that cylinder cleaned up and start reassembling this thing with the new piston. All right, so something happened to my phone, I guess. It just stopped recording about halfway through the cleaning process of this cylinder. I don't really know why, but anyway, we got this cylinder pretty well cleaned out, at least on the inside. The outside's still kind of nasty, but I don't really care. This four-wheeler isn't the cleanest thing in the world anyway. So now we can go ahead and put the base gasket on, the new piston in, and this cylinder. I am going to go ahead and check the ring gaps off camera, just because it's kind of hard to film down in there while I'm working. So I'm going to check those off camera, and then we can start assembling this thing. All right, so I just got that base gasket on, so let's go ahead and install these rings onto the piston here. I already checked the clearances in the cylinder right there, and we are good to go. So let's go ahead and get these rings installed and get this piston onto the rod with the new wrist pin right here. All right, guys, so we just got this high compression piston in here, and what I actually had to do off camera was take the piston off of the rod and take the cylinder, flip it upside down, and put it up on the workbench to kind of be able to work the rings into the cylinder, because I wasn't really able to do it on here because it's just too tight of a space with all these studs being here and just everything else around there. So I finally got it in, and what I had to do was have the piston sticking out just enough on the bottom to where I could slide the wrist pin in. And then once I got that in with the little clip, I could slide this thing together. So I've got the cylinder bolted down with the two little bolts on the other side, so it shouldn't move when I rotate the engine over. And this piston is in here, and I have to say it looks nice and shiny and clean in there. So we actually just got our new head in from eBay. It is used, but it's in way better shape than our old one. You can at least tell from the exhaust side, because if you look at this one, it's quite a big difference. So on that one, the valves were bent on the exhaust side. This one obviously not, but there's two things that we have to do to get this thing ready to put on to the four-wheeler. Number one is I have to cut off this boss right here, because if you remember from the last video on this head, we did have to cut that off in order to be able to remove it without removing the entire engine. So there's no mounts for this on the frame, so this is kind of pointless anyway. So I am going to be cutting that off. And also, if you look, there's a little bit of buildup on some of these valves, and there's a little bit of rust on the exhaust valves there. So what I may have to do is get in there with a wire brush and try and open and close these valves a little bit from the other side, and try and clean those up a little bit. This also comes with, gotta take all these bolts off here, give me a second, a new set of cams. These are already nice and bolted in here. This one I do have to clean up a little bit. I'll probably just take like a Scotch pad or something and just kind of smooth this down, because there's a little bit of buildup on it. So I'll clean that up, but these do seem to be spinning nicely, although the retainers aren't tightened down very well, but it does seem to be working pretty well. Once we get the head on, obviously we will have to time this thing up, which I still have to do a little bit of research on exactly what orientation these go in. I know there's the little two tick marks on the sides of the cam, but I have to figure out whether they go this way or that way. So I'll do a little research off camera, but for right now, let's go ahead and get that boss cut off, and then I can clean up the valves, and then we can go ahead and install this new head. so I got the boss cut off right there on that side, and I also took a wire brush and cleaned up this whole combustion chamber, and I have to say it actually turned out a lot better than I thought. This thing is like almost like a mirror. It's really nice and clean, looking good. So one last thing I want to do is I want to check to make sure these valves are sealing properly, and one quick and easy way to do that is to take some brake clean, squirt it down inside the ports right here without spilling any, and then hold a lighter up to the valves, and if it lights on fire, that means your valves are leaking. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so this is the exhaust side. All right, we have no fire, so that means the exhaust valves are sealing properly. So let's dump these out and check the intake side. All right, no fire, that means no leaks. We're good to go. Next step is to start reassembling this head onto the engine. So we've got our head on with our new head gasket in here. I haven't put the cams and everything on yet because I still need to torque down the 4 nuts that go on the studs and the 4 extra bolts that help hold this head on, which are right here, here, and there's also 2 on the sides, which actually go upwards instead of downwards like the rest to help hold the head on. These 2 I'll just torque down off camera because they're kind of hard to get to and hard to film. All of them I'm going to be first torquing down to 14.5 foot-pounds, and then I'm going to step it up to the final 29 foot-pounds that's going to hold this head on. Let's go ahead and get this head torqued down, and then we can finish putting all of the cams and cam retainers and everything on, along with the valve cover. All right, guys, so now that the head is completely torqued down, now we can go ahead and put in our new camshafts along with the brackets. And one thing to notice is look at the difference between the new cam and the old cam right here. You can see how absolutely roasted those old cams got. I mean, those things got really hot. So I'm really glad that I'm replacing these. So let's go ahead and get these brackets in and then get the new cams in. So real quick, before we put the cams on, I actually did a little bit more research, and it turns out I was wrong about the torque specs because I looked it up on Google, and what AI says I found is usually not as reliable because I searched it like 3 times and it gave me 3 different answers. So I looked into the actual shop manual for this thing, which is the proper torque specs for sure, and it said that the nuts right here on the 4 studs actually get torqued to 44 foot-pounds, not 29. And those small bolts actually get torqued to 24, not 29. So I'm probably just gonna leave the small bolts the way they are because I'd rather them be just slightly over because I don't want to have to back them off and then retorque them. And plus I have a high compression head in here, so I'd rather them be a little bit tighter. So I do need to retorque the nuts on those studs up to 44 foot-pounds. So make sure when you're looking up torque specs, always refer to the shop manual and don't use AI, because I almost made a big mistake. So yeah. And also the small little bolts that go into the brackets to hold the cams in, as well as the 3 that go down on the side right here, those get torqued to 89 inch-pounds, which is about 7.5 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and install those on the side and also retorque the nuts on the head, and then we can install the cams. So I've got this engine right here all timed up. I did spin it over by putting an Allen into the crankshaft hole right there and spinning it over to make sure that everything was properly timed and that the valves weren't hitting the piston, and we are good to go. So now that all that's done, we can now put the valve cover back on, the intake manifold, and the starter. So let's go ahead and get those things done. And then after that, there's a couple things I want to do to the carburetor, a couple adjustments I want to make on it and get it cleaned. And then we can finish putting the rest of this stuff back together. So now that we got the valve cover, the starter, and the intake manifold back on, let's go ahead and open up this carburetor to not only clean it out a little bit, but I also want to see if I can go up a jet size, because this thing was running kind of lean before and I want to make it a little bit more rich. So let's go ahead and open this thing up and see if we can do that. All right, so we've got the carburetor back on, and I was able to clean it out a little bit. And one thing I did, actually two things I did, was number one, I slightly drilled out the main jet for a little bit more fuel flow. And then I also took this little secondary jet out and replaced it with a slightly larger one. This one's a 45. I think I replaced it with a 50. So that should give us a little bit more fuel in this thing. And then I also discovered that this little rod sticking out is actually the choke. So if you pull that out, it engages a enrichment jet. So that would explain why this thing was so hard to start before, because I would always have to spray a little bit of brake clean in it and play with the throttle a lot to get this thing to start up. But now that I just discovered that this thing has a choke, this thing should be a heck of a lot easier to start up. So that'll be nice. But for right now, this thing is mostly back together. So let's go ahead and start putting the exhaust back on, as well as the gas tank and front fairings and all that. So we finally got this thing just about back together. The only things we have left to do on this are I have to drain the gas tank, because now that I have the high compression piston in this thing, I need to run 93 in this thing instead of just regular pump gas. So that's currently what's in here. So we need to drain the regular gas out of it and then refill this with some 93. And then I also still need to fill the engine with oil, as well as the separate reservoir right here. And then I'm also going to go buy some new radiator hoses for this thing, because the old ones were just full of rust and just dirt and just nastiness. And I might also try and flush out the radiator just to kind of get all the grime and just dirt out of it. I also need to reconnect the fuel line once we fill this thing up with 93. And then right now, let's actually, before we put the front fairing back on, let's go ahead and get these front shock bushings replaced. Yeah, these shock bushings are completely gone. So I just got all 4 front shock bushings replaced, and now these shocks are not going anywhere and there's no play in them. So I also put these springs on the exhaust off camera just because they weren't on there before, and this exhaust was a little bit loose and it had a little bit of a leak right there, but now it's nice and solid. And then I also drained out all of the old gas out of here off camera as well. The last things we need to do on this thing are fill this thing up with 93, and I still need to replace the coolant lines once they get here from eBay, and then fill this thing up with coolant and oil. And then we should be able to start this thing up and take it for a quick drive. right, so a bit of a change of plans on this thing. The new coolant lines that I ordered are taking a lot longer to get here from eBay than I thought they would, and I kind of have a video scheduled that I need to stick to, so I am going to kind of cut this video a little bit short, but what we will do is take off this last coolant line right here, maybe try and flush out the radiator with some water, and I will try and go ahead and start this thing up. I won't run it for too long, obviously, because there's no coolant in it, and I don't want to blow it up again the same way I originally did from having no coolant, obviously. So let's go ahead and get this last radiator line removed, and then we can throw some 93 in this thing and give it a test start and just run it for maybe, I don't know, 20-30 seconds, just to see how it sounds and see how it runs. Oh crap. Yeah, there's still a little bit of water in that line. I'm gonna put a bucket under this and try and dump a little bit of distilled water in it to flush it out a little bit. Yeah, there's not much of it, but that is the water that came out of that line. Absolutely disgusting. Yeah, that's some pretty dirty water coming out of there. There's probably still going to be a little bit of gunk down in there, but there's really nothing I can do about it since it's kind of below where this bung is. That's about all I could do on this thing, so let's go ahead and throw some 93 in this thing and try and start it up and see how it runs and see how it sounds too. Leaks. All right, I do have to charge the battery on this thing because it's kind of dead. It's like it's not even turning over. So also because I left the key on, but need to charge the battery and then we can start this thing up. All right guys, so it's the next day and I've got the battery all charged up on this thing. So now we can get this four-wheeler finally running again. So turn on the fuel. And we are leaking everywhere. Hold on. All right, I have to trim this fuel line because it's like peeing all over the place. Give me 1 second. All right, so I had to fix that fuel line real quick because the end of it was a little bit dry rotted. So now let's turn the fuel on again. Make sure we don't have any leaks. It's dripping a little bit, but it's better than it was. Okay, yeah, we're kind of leaking a little bit, but I'm just gonna go ahead and start it up a little bit right here. Super long because we don't have any coolant in it, like I said, but it actually runs really good, and I didn't even have to choke it to start it. So I would call that a win. So I do have to cut this video short because I'm kind of out of time to film this week, and I'm working on other projects. So in the next video of this project, I'm actually going to be putting a new muffler on this thing so it sounds a little bit better. It doesn't have that like weird rattle sound to it because there's nothing inside of that muffler. It's just a big tube. And then I'm also going to maybe try and finally fix the front brakes on this thing because I've said that I would do that in previous videos on this, but I haven't. So we may try and do that. I'm also going to be putting on the new radiator lines as well as filling this thing up with coolant. And then just kind of button up a few other small things on this thing, including the radiator fan manual switch right here. And then we will take this thing on a test drive. And I will have to do a break-in period on this new piston in here, which I'll probably do off camera because it does take about 2 hours of running this thing, actually a couple of days, because you gotta let it cool down overnight after letting it idle for 30 minutes, and just, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you have to do to get this thing broken in properly. So all that will be in the next video, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.